Well, for the last scheduled time in 2017, welcome to the DoDCast. I'm Ron Chuckett, and he is Drew Douglas, and it's the 21st day. It's the shortest day of the year. I don't know if we both got our haircut to celebrate. Say hi.
Hey, how you doing, Ron?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Excited that we actually have a few roster moves to talk about tonight.
We actually have some stuff to talk about tonight. It's not, we did three of the we were going to do a show every night during the winter meetings, but nothing happened, except for like that after one show. So, but there has been a number of things to talk about, and so let's start with the two additions to the roster, or the two players that have signed. I think we talked about Brandon Kinsler last week, but let's talk about that again because it's apparently official. And the contract is for 2 years, but there's a mutual option. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, it's the first year is guaranteed, and then on the second year there's a mutual option. So if the Nationals pick up their end first, then he gets paid, I believe it's $10 million. But if the Nationals decline their end, then he can still accept his end and remain with the Nats for $5 million, or he could decline his end and become a free agent.
And there's a vesting option in there, possibly for a third year.
Right. So I think if he pitches the way he's capable, then hopefully he'll be with the Nets for the next 3 years, and maybe even making as much as $10 million in 2019.
One of the question that we got asked tonight on Twitter before we came on was, what's going on? What's the next step for the bench? I assume now that outside of what Matt Albers might do or want to do, that the bullpen is pretty much all set now with Kinsler back in the fold. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I would think so. And I think there's also a couple guys in Sean Kelly and Cody Glover who the Nationals are really hoping can just stay healthy in 2018 and have kind of bounce back years and pitch the way that they're capable. So those are a couple more guys who are kind of in the picture that might not be at the front of our minds.
Right. And Jerry Krasnick said late last week, or I think it was Sunday, that Albers was going to sign with the mystery team sometime this week for possibly 2 years. Where that was and how much it's for is we don't know who's talking to Jerry. Jerry's usually a pretty good source when it comes to that sort of things, but that was as cryptic as you could possibly get. But the main part of the bullpen is coming back, and those bits and pieces part. I mean, as much as we'd like to have Matt Albers back, you can find other people for that role, especially if someone like Sean Kelly is healthy. Spring training is going to be huge for him because if he struggles down in Florida, I don't see him. I see them encouraging him to retire.
Yeah, and I would think maybe of any reliever, he would be the one to retire. He's had a couple Tommy Johns throughout his career. He struggled for most of last year. He's seemingly battling injuries. So I think, if he's struggling again and it really just doesn't seem like whether he's right or if it's due to possible arm injury, I think, we could see him retire maybe before the season even starts.
Yeah, I think that would be the case. I don't think that he's tradable at this point. The Nats are going to never get rid of money. I think they're going to give him every chance to do what he can to get back in the lineup. If he can't do it, I would be surprised if he would take a demotion. He could. You have to clear waivers first. But hopefully it comes out well for him this year, this spring. Judo Joker says, hello. This is a time of year for us to think about all the things we have to be thankful for. Absolutely. And yes, we're thankful for all of you watching and that have been with us for the last 365 days. So we're thankful to you, and we're thankful that hopefully you're all in good health and recovered from scares. Both Drew and I are doing better than the last time we talked to you. And so, yes, we have a lot to be thankful for. He also says, I think Cody Glover was very candid with his take on his health last year. Hopefully, Mr. Glover has grown up a little bit from what happened last year. You understand, I mean, you're young. You want to be able to prove yourself a lot. So you can understand where someone who is fighting for a roster spot or fighting for innings is going to not necessarily be truthful about things so he doesn't lose his spot. But as you know, there's a limit to what you can do with that. And for Glover, it really cost him down the road.
Yeah, I can definitely see why he was trying to pitch through the injuries and just remain on the big league roster. But yeah, I think now he's learned his lesson. I'm sure the Nationals sat him down and talked to him and told him like he is a big part of their future plans and maybe even a future closer, and to be truthful with the team and but when he's available and when he's pitching through some sort of injury.
Yeah, you can't do that. You really can't do that. You can play through some mild injuries, but when you're when you're pitching through an injury, especially one that's in your arm, you're just going to make it worse. That's not something that you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and go, oh, I feel better all of a sudden, unless it's Max Scherzer's neck. And for the love of God, I hope, along with all the diaper changing and all that, that he remembered to buy some memory foam pillows.
I heard.
I think he can afford to go to Kohl's and get himself some of those.
Yeah, I would think he could use some of his $210 million in this contract to buy a pillow or two.
Yes, maybe even a couple ShamWows if they still make them. So yes, the other big signing this week was Matt Adams from the Atlanta Braves. If you were believed that the Nats didn't want to spend the money on Adam Lind, that he was supposed to get $5 million, they pretty much spent the same amount on Matt Adams. It's a $4 million base. It's a $500,000 with incentives, and if you add in I think the $500,000 that Washington paid it for Lind's buyout, then they spent that money on Matt Adams. I did a piece this morning about that signing, and I like it. I think it's another solid move from the front office. Here's a guy that in 300 and some odd plate appearances, was it low 315, 316, he had 19 home runs. He played, here's a guy that played so well filling in for Freddie Freeman that they moved Freddie Freeman to third so he could stay in the lineup. Now he kind of curtailed at the end of the season, but I mean, not only is this a great insurance policy for Ryan Zimmerman, but it does give them some power off the bench, which they were sorely lacking with Adam Lind about to leave.
Yeah, I really like the move. I think it's another great move from Mike Rizzo, the Nationals GM. And, I mean, if you look at the numbers, Matt Adams is basically a younger Adam Lind. And so I loved Lind much of the same and kind of fill the same role as, left-handed power hitter off the bench and the primary backup first baseman. And, I mean, he has a little bit of experience in the outfield. The one thing I remember from his time in the outfield is him tripping over his own feet when he's still with the Cardinals, so I really don't want to see him out in the outfield too much. But, I mean, he is a little bit of insurance out there if the Nationals deal with a bunch of outfield injuries as they did last year.
He's a better option than Wilmer Defoe.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
I'm a better option than Wilmer Defoe when I'm 46 and don't run. Why did he fall out of favor in St. Louis?
I think there just wasn't really a spot for him. At times, he's very out of shape in St. Louis, but, now I was kind of doing a little bit of research on him. He's really into Pilates. He's in really, I know this is kind of cliche, but he's in the best shape of his life. There just wasn't really a spot for him after they moved Matt Carpenter over to first base.
So the Braves scored, and the Braves weren't going to get anything for him. And again, this is kind of a low risk, potentially high reward signing by Mike Rizzo and company. And so let's get to the question that we got on Twitter. What's next for the bench? I mean, you figure that there's a backup catcher, there's Defoe, there's Adams. Brian Goodwin is probably going to make the team. So that's probably it. Or are they going to carry one more, you think?
I think that's about it. I think Adams really filled the big question. I think obviously they could use a catcher, but I mean, I would feel comfortable going into the season with Pedro Severino as the backup, and then going out and getting another catcher around the trade deadline because I mean the Nationals are going to win the division, right, assuming that everyone doesn't get hurt, and so I don't think they really need to have a frontline catcher at the start of the year as long as they kind of get everything together for October.
I mean, there's some good ones out there. I wrote about Alex Avila. You could always trade for one. I wrote about Wilson Ramos because Tampa because both the Florida teams are going through fire sales again right now. Thank goodness that no one really here is a fan of both those Florida franchises. Can you imagine being a Marlins fan right now?
It's rough. From Lauria to Jeter.
Right. So, if they want to spend the money, they can. But I believe it was Thomas Boswell in the Post said, and you just said as well, they have luxuries at this point. Even last year, they had 13 players in the disabled list come the middle of August, and they still won the division by 20 games. The Phillies, I think, probably really the Philadelphia Phillies right now, I think, are the second best team in that division.
Yeah, I agree.
That's scary. Oh, Judo says, oh, by the way, I wasn't here last week. Yeah, we missed you. 50 demerits for you. We need to get an excuse from NASA for missing these shows, Judo. I'm sure Ricky now thinks Derek Jeter's a better Yankee than Mariano Rivera now. Since we're not exclusively talking about the Nationals here, what did you think of Marlins fan ripping Mr. Jeter a new one in that town hall?
I don't know. I heard some of the things that Marlins man was saying. He said he wasn't going to renew his season tickets because he's paying major league prices for a AAA team, and he wanted them to have like Marlins man Mondays, and he wanted to throw out the first pitch before a game. So I don't know. I'm not sure all that is warranted. He wasn't even really at those games that much. He seemed like he was all over the country at huge sporting events, and Marlins don't play in too many of those.
even the few times that I was watching, I tried to get out as many of those games as I could doing. Don't tell Ricky, okay? Oh, hi, Rick. You'd watch, and he'd be sitting there staring at his phone most of the game. It was pretty obvious because there aren't a lot of fans down there. Ricky says, as far as his favorite Jeter, biggest favorite Yankee, no, it's still Bo, but we appreciate the holiday gift. Of course, that gift, Big G and Carlos Stanton. Yeah, I don't get a lot of that, but I can understand why people who've stuck with this team are upset. There was the 17-minute interview between Dan LeBatard and Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, which LeBatard pretty much filleted Manfred over, what do you mean you didn't know there was a fire sale coming? How could you let this happen? And honestly, as happy as Ricky is for Giancarlo Stanton for Christmas, the Marlins have done terrible in these trades. Right? I mean, is there anyone there you go, oh, I think the Marlins are a better team because they have so-and-so now?
Yeah, I mean, I think they probably should have gotten more prospects for Stanton because, he is coming off of the MVP season. But I think it was kind of a trade-off because they didn't really get too much in terms of prospects back, but they're not really paying any of that contract, which is what they want to get out of. So I think if they would have taken on more of the contract, they could have gotten some better prospects in return, which I personally would have done because, they're trading any major leaguer at this point. They're not going to have too much money on the books. They can pay Stanton a little bit in order to get some prospects to build up for the future. But, I mean, yeah, they haven't gotten too much. The Ozuna trade was all right, but I don't know. I don't really like what they're doing with the rebuild so far.
No, but, this seems to happen every 3 or 4 years down there. It'd be different if this was the first time they were doing it. But you don't remember when they won the World Series in '97, they tore apart the team immediately after that. And the same thing in 2003 after they beat the Cubs and some other team in the World Series. They pretty much, I know what the team is. Don't tweet me the answer. I know what that is. I'm just being polite. I mean, this is like the fourth or fifth or sixth major rebuild from the Marlins. And they've gotten less and less for it this time, and it makes it more difficult because of the hundreds of millions of dollars that the community, both county and the city of Miami, have put into building that stadium.
Yeah, I think part of it comes down from the mismanagement from Jeffrey Loria, and obviously now he's no longer affiliated with the team, but I mean, he mismanaged the Marlins very bad. He's the reason that the Nationals are here because he was the owner of the Expos and kind of ran them into the ground. So I think he's just kind of cancer for an MLB team. And I mean, I don't know. I think, yeah, he's partially to blame for kind of the dysfunction in the Marlins organization over the past few years.
But he didn't fire people with colon cancer.
Yeah, Jeter hasn't exactly done too well either.
You know, Judo asked if the team I mentioned was it the Red Sox. No, it was not. I was being nice to Rick because it's Christmas. It was the Yankees. We're the ones that we were Aaron Boone in the other LCS. Um, so there, which is the other Christmas present the Yankees have is their new manager. And boy, the message boards are thinking the Yankees are going to win 110 games this year. I want to know with what pitching they're going to win 110 games with this year. Personally, and their offense, I think, is tremendous, but you do have to be able to pitch. And yes, Tanaka's back, Sabathia is back, and Severino is back. But I was surprised that Pineda went to what, Milwaukee?
Minnesota, but he's going to miss this year after having Tommy John.
So it doesn't really matter anyway. Ricky asks, here's a good one for the last show of the year. What is your Nance New Year's resolution besides winning a playoff series? And Judo says, is keep the team healthier this year. I'd like to see Rendon signed to an extension. And I want the Bryce Harper mess resolved sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And kind of going off your point about Harper, I think the Nationals really need to be smart about Harper too. Obviously, he's a generational talent, and he's been great for the Nationals, including that fantastic 2015 season. But if he's going to cost $400-500 million, I think it's irresponsible to re-sign him for that much. You're just really going to hamper your franchise for years to come because, I mean, most of your payroll is going to him alone. Only take him for $300 million, but if you're getting up into $400-500 million, let him go.
I wrote in the piece on Sunday about this being kind of an uncomfortable decision for everybody. If the Nats went to him and said 7 years, 280, would that be enough? That's $40 million a year, but you're seeing all these monster contracts that don't pay off at the end. But then again, he's 20, even 26, but I mean, it's free agency. This isn't a case of like Albert Pujols or Giancarlo Stanton, or who's going to have some of the best years of his career coming up. If there's a guy that you're going to take the risk of taking a 10-year deal, wouldn't it be him? He's like, if he got a 10-year deal, he leaves that again at 36 years old, which isn't. I mean, I wouldn't want to be paid $40 million at 36. Of course I would, but that's not a terrible overpay as opposed to someone who, let's say, like what Scott Boras wants for Jake Arrieta.
Yeah, I mean, with his youth right now, I think he is kind of a unique free agent since he is going to be hitting the market at 26. But I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of a little scared off with his injury history, and I don't know. I'm not sure that any player is worth that much money.
I don't. Yeah, because you're basing a lot of that still on potential. I still think 7-280 gets it done. Mm-hmm. I think he would take that, and maybe with an opt out after 3 years.
Yeah, I think we probably would see an opt out. It seems to be pretty common in today's game.
What about what do you think they're going to offer? What would be a fair deal for you for Rendon?
I mean, I think he would definitely sign for maybe like $30 million a year. I mean, if you look at his WAR, he just had a 7 WAR season throughout his career. He's typically around a 5 or 6 WAR player, and the general consensus of today's game is that 1 WAR is worth $8 million. So I mean, if every season were like his 2017 season, supposedly worth almost $56 million a year, which obviously he's not going to get that. But I mean, I don't know. I think he's just a great defender at third base. He's a great offensive hitter. He's got good gap-to-gap power. I mean, I would really give him whatever he wanted to stay with the Nats.
Scott Boras will use that clip of you in whatever arguments he makes for that because he is now a Boras client. All right, Mr. Keeler, what is your Nats resolution for 2017? Sit there and ask us a question. We can ask the same of you. Yeah, that's a good question. What are you looking forward to most next year?
Just seeing Dave Martinez as a manager. I think I think he'll do pretty well as a manager. Seeing another year of some of these great young players and Trey Turner, Anthony Rendon, obviously Bryce Harper, who we talked about, and then maybe even see a little Victor Robles if an outfielder were to suffer an injury.
I think Robles gets the call at some point this year.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no position for him to get at bats, then he can go play for the Syracuse Mets, which is still a national team, but owned by the Mets. We'll bring that up. That's just weird. Judo says Rendon is way more important than Bryce. I don't think I'd go that far. Good third basemen are way more valuable, rare than good outfielders. Bryce seems to. Bryce has that intangible. I mean, if they were ever in a tight race, Harper's the kind of guy I think that could just say, get on my back, boys. We're gonna win this thing. Hopefully he does that while he's still in Washington. I mean, but it was tough last year because everything was done so early, and he was hurt. A healthy Bryce Harper, a fully healthy Bryce Harper, and that NLDS, I think it turns differently. If they hadn't wasted the first 2 games trying to get him at bats and he's swinging at crappy pitches, one run in any of those losses, and they go on.
Yeah, I think to kind of go off what Judah said, if I were only able to re-sign one of them, I would probably go with Rendon, just because he won an MVP in really any season. You could see him winning the MVP award, but he's still pretty young. He's 27 right now, and just with what he's produced for the Nationals, and I think he's just going to cost so much less than Bryce Harper. To re-sign Rendon.
Yeah, I definitely think Rendon needs to be re-signed. He's my favorite Nat, by the way. I think he just if he leads, he does it so quietly. And I don't think we've seen his best baseball yet. He's so good at third, and because of players like Chris Bryant, who really is good, and Arenado in Colorado, I mean, Rendon will never get the credit for being as good at third as he should, just because that's a pretty good company. Ricky says his resolution is for Trey to steal 60 bases this year. I'll ask this question of Rick. We talked about this a little bit last week. Judah wasn't here for this either. I imagine, Adam Eaton is going to be the leadoff hitter at least for a while. And we talked a little bit about, well, who would you bat second? And, of course, Turner comes up, but Turner doesn't take a lot of pitches. That was something that was an obvious need during the playoffs, as far as when Jason Worth batted second at the end, the Nats offense was a little bit better. So for you watching out there in the YouTube chat, what do you think of this? Drew and I talked about this last week. Would you bat Rendon second and maybe bat Turner 6th or 7th in the lineup and see if you can get a stolen base chances that way? Just food for thought there. Judo says if Strauss keeps things up and stays healthy, I think he's a very big threat for the Cy Young. I agree. I think he was a better pitcher than Scherzer the second half of the year, but Scherzer, I believe, the second time he got nailed by a ball in the shin, wasn't the same pitcher. I'm not sure how much the next stuff bothered him too, but he didn't seem to be the same pitcher as he did the first half. But his first half of the year, to be honest, was kind of Kershaw-esque. We're talking Scherzer here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're both just phenomenal starting pitchers, and we're lucky as Nationals fans to see them every 5th day, and both of them in the same rotation. I think if Steven Strasburg is able to remain healthy, which has been a big if with him throughout his career, then he'll have another great season. I mean, we saw he had 30-something inning scoreless streak last season, and he's just – I mean, when he's out there on the mound every 5th day, there's really not many pitchers out there I'd rather have. And maybe even like Max Scherzer, obviously he's one of the best in the game, but he's aging and Strasburg's a little bit younger. So I think if Strasburg's able to remain healthy, he could go out and possibly win the Cy Young next year.
What do you think of Strasburg's argument about not pitching in All-Star games?
I don't mind it. I know some people were giving him a hard time for it, and he's kind of making excuses, but I mean, I don't know. The All-Star game right now, it's really a meaningless game. Maybe this year you'd like to see him pitching it just because it's in DC. But I mean, if he's gonna work and like prepare as if he was preparing for a start and go out there and just kind of throw it all out there for one inning, I can see how that could kind of mess up his routine a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe we see him start one of the last games before the All-Star game, making him unavailable for it.
Yeah, that's probably what's going to be the case. I wrote there was some people who took a lot of umbrage to that. Like, how dare you? We pay your salary. Like, but you're right. I mean, pitchers today have such a set routine between starts. And even when you go to warm up, it used to be back when I walked uphill in snowstorm barefoot to school both ways days. Okay, so the 80s. That your starters went 3 innings and then your second pitcher out usually went 2 in an all-star game. So you were gonna, even if you were gonna burn a start in the all-star game, you were gonna get 9-10 batters anyway. And so, yeah, it wasn't a full start, but at least you got your money's worth. Today, the starter only goes 1 inning. And so you have to go through all the motions, the half hour to warm up and all that, to potentially throw between 9 and 15 pitches. And then you kind of don't pitch it. Then you miss a start. Yeah, I can see where that would throw you out of your routine. And the playoffs are much more important. They're longer. You need that energy for October. So I agree with him. I think it's something that Major League Baseball has to look at, how they approach that. Do you start seeing all-star games where you just have 9 closers go? Have it all relievers, maybe 1 or 2 starters? I don't know. Judo says Max had a monster first half and Strauss had a monster second half. Regarding the lineup, Ricky says Turner and Eaton 1-2 could be so dominant in giving RBI opportunities for the rest of the lineup. Click that way in April. Hopefully, if that's the case, Rick, Turner doesn't put too much pressure on himself. I think it's the one thing that Turner did a couple times last year. He just put so much pressure on himself to succeed. He kind of choked on it. You just got to let the game come to him. I'll let you follow up on that for a sec because I got one more thing here in the chat from Judo. I'm going to quote the host of Today's Sports. So is that Savannah Guthrie or is that Al Roker? It's Hoda, right? It's Hoda and Kathy Lee. If you have to pat Strauss on the butt and tell him he's the best, you do that, especially after that game 4. That's true. I don't want to say massaging egos is a bad thing, but you got to know how to read your but you got to know how to motivate your players. And sometimes you can motivate that through the old the Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick way of my way of the highway. And sometimes you just got to be overly flattering. I'll let you respond to those couple things.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Strasburg, he just seems so quirky, and he's kind of a creature of habit. And if everything isn't his way, he's not going to perform as well. And so, I mean, at this point, the All-Star game is really more of just an honor. And so if he doesn't want that honor in order to remain healthy and pitch the way he did in the by all means, just skip the game. I don't really care one way or the other if he pitches in the game. But in the end, about Turner, I think he could be good in the 2-hole, and that's what we saw kind of in April last year when Eaton was still healthy. We saw both Eaton and Turner at the top of the lineup and really causing havoc on the base paths. And you got Harper, Zim, Murphy, Rendon, the kind of bigger bats behind them. But I think if you put Turner further down in the lineup and kind of like maybe the 6-hole, then you almost have a leadoff batter for the bottom of the lineup, which I think could possibly work.
I think no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I think we see Dave Martinez kind of experiment with several different lineups in spring training and throughout the season. Another experiment I think we see is maybe pitcher in the 8-hole, which is what Madden used to do.
I'll definitely say that. And if you do that, then I would bat Turner 9th. Because I think if this was the point I was going to make was if this was an American League team with the DH, I'd bat him 9th, which essentially gives you 2 leadoff hitters right in a row. Ricky agrees with me in the postseason. Turner put too much pressure on himself, but he did have the injury in April, which prevented the 2 from getting into a rhythm. And Ricky's right, especially since by the time that Turner seemed to be coming back to himself was when Eaton had the injury. And Judo says Strauss can say, do whatever he wants as long as it isn't illegal or dangerous.
Yeah, with the performance he had in the second half and in the postseason, I don't really care what he's doing as long as he's remaining healthy.
You know, if they want to give him IVs between innings for the cramps, that's the one thing that kind of concerns me with Strauss. I say that almost jokingly. With the cramps at the end, because in the summer, you know, at some point they're going to play meaningful baseball in July, August, and September, where they're going to need him to be as close to 100% as possible. Hopefully that's something that the physios and nutritionists are working on with him, so that's not an issue, because you really, I mean, the bullpen's in a lot better shape this year, but you really can't sit there in a game that you expect to win. All of a sudden you have the massing camera showing Strasburg getting, you know, massages everywhere, so he's not cramping up between innings.
I think that's a big concern. I mean, he's from San Diego, where it's always gorgeous weather. Maybe he's not used to the humidity and the heat, but I don't know. He's got to figure something out, whether it's a new nutritional diet and everything that he's on, or working out like Arizona in the off season, somewhere we can just kind of adjust to the heat. He's really got to, because like you said, eventually the NL East isn't going to be as bad as it is now, and the Nationals are going to be in an actual pennant race.
Yeah, I mean, and you need. Those games are really, really important, and you need him to be. You don't want to give the other team a psychological advantage. You know, if you remember the 23-5 game with the Mets, that was the one that Syndergaard got hurt. They should never have started, and eventually, the Nats just started teeing off. You know, mind games do happen in baseball. They happen a lot. Judo says regarding Scherzer batting, he probably would want to bat leadoff if left to his own devices.
Yeah. And I mean, we saw him hit the homer last year. Maybe we put him in cleanup.
Him and Tommy Malone.
Yeah.
All right, we're doing a slideshow on this next week, but since you don't write for us anymore, we can't ask you to write about it. But what was your lasting impression? Judo, you can answer this too. What was your guys' lasting impression from 2017? I think we're doing that, running that next week between Christmas and New Year's, as we get set for the calendars to change. So, Judo, Ricky, whoever else is watching, you know, jump in the chat and say that. I think that's pretty much all the newsy things we have. As you said, you know, the bench is always going to be short because it's a National League team. They can probably vary. You know, I think the later we go, I think the less chances of someone actually being traded actually happens. So fans of Michael A. Taylor and Brian Goodwin, you know, I think the chances of them staying now are better than what they were 2 or 3 weeks ago. Even though I'd be curious to see, the Yankees thought they were going to get Garrett Cole from the Pirates. If the Nationals decide that they actually wanted to trade for a starter, that's where I would go personally. It would be Cole. What's your sense on how they're going to do that? You really think it's going to be 4 or 5 guys in Florida trying out for the 5th spot?
I mean, yeah, like I said earlier, I think the beginning of the season doesn't really matter too much, just because the division is in the state that it is. So, I mean, they have A.J. Cole, who pitched decent down the stretch. Eric Fetty, he's one of their top prospects. Maybe he gets a shot. And then there's Tommy Malone, and I don't really expect just stick with those 3. I think maybe we see a few more starting pitchers sign on minor league deals with invites to spring training, and maybe we just see all those guys compete for the 5th spot, and then Rizzo goes out and gets a starter at the deadline.
Yeah, it's not something you need to start the year with. I'm going to anger some people. What about someone like Edwin Jackson?
I mean, if maybe to start the year, yeah, I wouldn't mind him too much. It'll be frustrating at times, but I think if he can just give them some decent innings, he's not really taxing the bullpen too much, then it would be all right, as long as they go out and get another starter at some point during the season.
Edwin Jackson is not starting a playoff game for the Washington Nationals ever. Ricky's answer to the slider that we're going to do, I thought that is. I thought the team made great strides. I'll remember the fun from Game 2 against the Cubs, but Zimmerman's comeback story and the elite levels of Scherzer and Strauss pitched at were fun to watch. Oh, yeah. And he says regarding Garrett Cole, don't think Cole is going anywhere. Price is too high, and that's right. They do want a lot. Keep an eye on Patrick Corbin. Nats also added Cesar Vargas on the minors deal, so throw him in with Malone. And Judo says the core, as far as the slideshow, the core of the team, ones under contract this past year, are very strong. I wonder, I would think that, I could see where AJ Cole might be the Michael A. Taylor of 2018, because I really do think he's down to pretty much his last chance. And you can always probably convert him into a reliever, but if he wants to be a starter in the major leagues, I mean, the job is his for the taking. And just like when Dusty Baker sat down Taylor after the Eaton injury and say, "Son, this is it for you. You make the most of this because this is it." Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what Cole needs, because he wasn't a terrible pitcher, but he never, in any time that I watched, though, gave me the impression he was any better than a quad A.
Yeah, I think he was making some strides at the end of the year, and like you said, maybe he's really running out of opportunities at this point. So maybe that kind of gives him a little extra motivation. And face and the new pitching coach Derek Lilliquist helps him out a little bit to kind of get over the hump and become a major league caliber starting pitcher.
Well, Lilliquist has his hands full with Malone, because Malone is a throwback starter. He's an 80s style lefty who pitches to contact, doesn't throw it very hard, and gets wrecked to the point last year with the Mets' ERA was over 8. I think it's fine that what they offered him was absolutely perfect, but that's going to be, to get him back with that kind of old style, it's going to be tough. Jeremy Guthrie for a 5th starter.
I think Guthrie's retired, and he's not really too interested in coming back, especially after what happened in his one start against Philly last year.
Yes, Judo. That wasn't very fun.
Mm-hmm.
But at least Austin Adams recorded an out, so Guthrie left the year with the highest ERA, because Adams' ERA is there. I guess anything else?
No, but just going back to the kind of New Year's resolution, I think the one thing as a resolution for Mets fans is just really enjoy the regular season, because obviously all these early exits in the postseason are frustrating. But I mean, this team, it's a fun team. You have some of the best players in the league on this one roster. They've won the division 2 years in a row, and they're the overwhelming favorites to win a 3rd year in a row, which isn't easy to win the division 3 straight years. So I think, it is frustrating to see them lose in the first round of the playoffs every year, but just enjoy the regular season as we get to watch great baseball from April through October.
I know that social media tends to draw on the more extremes. The Nats actually made the fan-sided fandom 250 this year, 227th. As a matter of fact, that's their TV ratings were 11th in baseball. Their mid-level attendance, because the Redskins aren't going to do anything ever in the near future, and you never know what the Caps and the Wizards are going to do. I think the Nationals are doing what they can to make themselves a force for not only now in the DC area, but for generations to come. And so, but really, as Drew said, you got to enjoy it. It's all supposed to be fun, and the Nats are a good team. Judo says the frustrating part about Cole would be he would pitch well for 4 or 5 innings, but he would have a bad inning that made it seem like a bad outing. Yeah, you give me 4 good innings, that's great, but you pitch 6. Judo says, which makes me think he has a lot of talent, but struggles between his ears. I won't think I would say that's fair for Cole. Ross kind of strikes me that way. But I don't get that sense for Cole. I just don't think. I'm just not sure what his ceiling is. I think his ceiling is a 5. He's got to be. I think if it doesn't work out and they can find someone, I think Cole could be a great addition to the bullpen um, in given course. But I'm not getting the sense that I think for me, you can agree or disagree with this, Drew. I think we've kind of pushed the edges of AJ Cole's talent. I'm not sure how much more is left in that ceiling to give.
Yeah, I think he definitely has more upside than a guy like Tommy Malone. But I mean, if he's just able to go out there and give you 5, 6 innings every fifth day as a 5 starter, the Nationals have the talent in the rotation at the front. And Scherzer and Strasburg, Gio had a good year last year. Roark, we know what he can do when he's going right. And then obviously they have Eric Fetty in the minors. I think Will Crow has a bright future as a starter. So I think, yeah, maybe Cole, if he's just a 5 starter for a year or two and he's able to just eat innings and give him like even just a 4 ERA, I think I would definitely take that. And like you said about maybe converting to being a reliever, he did pitch a little bit out of the bullpen and he looked much better. So maybe he's got a brighter future out of the bullpen than the starting rotation.
Judo said one more prediction. So wait and do the thanks and the happy Christmases and all that. It says Mariano Rivera replaces Rizzo as GM after the season and trades Bryce in New York. Judo. He's a free agent at the end of the year. If Bryce goes to New York, it's because the Yankees are going to offer the most money. There's no trade in New York. We'll trade him, though, if you trade us Judge and Gleyber Torres. Absolutely take that in a heartbeat. All right. So this is our last show of the year. And I want to embarrass Mr. Keeler just a little bit, along with my good friend, Mr. Douglas. We want to thank you because at some point over the next week, this website will have cleared 1 million page views in 2017, which is absolutely phenomenal. And it's thanks to people like you who put up with the shows and interact with us on Twitter and on Facebook and all that. You guys are the ones that make it possible. We do this for you, and you have paid us back this year in spades. 1 million page views is just something that I never thought would happen, or at least not this quickly. So thank you so much for all that you guys do for us with the contact and the stuff on Twitter and on YouTube. I mean, we do this for you, and you guys thank us for that. That's a million page views. Over 250,000 individuals this year read District on Deck. That's scary. I even, dress up every once in a while and remember to put commas in the right places. So thank you. All right. We'll have stuff. We'll have the Santa Claus piece on Sunday. Our contributor, Ryan Foley, did a wonderful slideshow that will go up on Tuesday on grading Mike Rizzo's 10 best free agent signings. Ross Steinberg did a piece that went today that, where are they now? People like Denard Span and Ian Desmond. Where are some of those who played for the Nats, and what are they doing these days? What else we got going on? We'll have next week. I'll have the 10 best individual seasons in Washington Nationals history. I was supposed to do this before the winter meetings, but other stuff happened, and so go ahead.
Yeah, and I'll have a slider with the 5 best games of the year, so that'll be pretty fun to kind of look back and see some of the brighter moments from the Nationals 2017 season.
So lots to look forward to as we go through the dead times, and before you know it, we're already within 60 days of pitchers and catchers reporting. So it's coming. It's coming pretty quick. So, thanks to Drew for all of his help. Drew and I will be with you a lot in the new year. I don't know when we'll start doing shows more often, but it'll be. I think are we gonna do Thursdays through the start of spring training? Is that what your schedule looks like?
Yes.
So, a big hand for Drew. It's been a rough couple of weeks for him, and we've persevered. And of course, a very special thank you to Ricky Keeler, who hopefully is still watching, for all the hard work he did for us as co-editor of District on Deck. These numbers that we've done would not have happened without his support while he was there and the continued guidance he gives us behind the scenes. So, Ricky, thank you very much. And to all of you, we hope you have a safe and happy, healthy Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And the next time we talk to you, unless something strange happens in the next week, don't count that out, will be sometime will be the first week of the new year. 2018 may she be a better one than 2017. So for Drew Douglas and the rest of the staff at District on Deck, I'm Ron Juckett. You can follow us at District on Deck on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and of course, districtondeck.com. Good night, Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you next time.